Hi, all. As he said, I'm Denise, if you don't know me, because I kind of keep to myself sometimes, and I've been here 20 years, but I don't know everybody. And some of you are new, too. But anyway, I wanted to share another testimony about how Pastor Jesse became our senior pastor. Because last year, I tried to share this with Jamie Smith, Pastor Jesse's mom, and I hardly could get 10 words out really explaining it, so it took a few pages. Sorry. I'll be short, but seriously, I wanted you guys to hear. It's pretty cool. I mean, every person on that search committee has their own story, I'm sure, but this is mine and how it happened for me, how it all went down. As a member of the church board, I was asked to serve on the Pastoral Search committee, and Pastor Jesse, like I said, Pastor Jesse was also on the church board at the time. As you may have heard, Pastor Ron, now Bishop Ron, had been talking to the church leadership team for years about how each leader should try to duplicate ourselves by finding somebody to mentor. And, you know, we're all growing older, and we are trying to find younger people and more leaders in the church. And I think that happened like 10 or 11 years ago. I think I first remember Pastor Ron talking about that about 10 or 11 years ago when my son Kenny and his wife Sarah were still here and hadn't moved to Nashville yet with Jeremy and Casey Neely. So anyway, this goes back a long time. Like, he'd been talking about this for years. And then eventually Pastor Ron started talking about, in church board, about succession planning for his own replacement specifically. At one of our leadership retreats, which has been mentioned maybe a couple times up here at least already, maybe Pastor Jesse said it was maybe 6 years ago, there were several people in the room who heard God tell them that Jesse would be our new church pastor. I wasn't one of those people, and I didn't have anything against Jesse. I'm just saying that wasn't what happened for me. But it was really cool how it all went down. I remember that both Teresa Glassburn and Colleen Dower shared with me that day about how God had spoken to them, and they were kind of teary-eyed. They were emotional about it because they had both felt God telling them Jesse would be our new pastor. And I think there was a third person. It maybe was Carrie Bowl. I can't remember. And then I know I've heard some others like Ryan White, maybe. I've heard, they didn't tell me that day, but I think a lot of people in that room heard God tell them that Jesse would be our new pastor. And so anyway, it was, and of course, Jesse has mentioned to us that he heard God speak to him that day as well. I wanted to ask I know everybody's not in the room right now, maybe that was at that leadership retreat, but if you were in that room and you heard God tell you that Jesse was going to be our new pastor, I was kind of hoping you would all stand just for a minute so we could see how many, because I'm curious to know. Teresa's not out here. Holy 3. Okay. 4. Curtis. Yeah. Alan. Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought. It's pretty cool. Like, God was really speaking to people. I didn't doubt that God had spoken to them. He just hadn't spoken to me about it. So fast forward to our first Pastoral Search Committee meeting last fall. Jesse, who was a member of the church board and would therefore be on the Pastoral Search Committee otherwise, he recused himself because he'd either decided already that he was going to apply for the position or he was still praying about it. I'm not sure which, but either way, he didn't join the search committee. I remember at least one church board member who sort of half-jokingly stated that we didn't need to have a search process because we all knew it was going to be Jesse. But the decision was made we would move forward with the search and allow God to show us who he wanted us to select. And Bishop Perry said, "God's got this," and that became our theme for the search committee. God's got this. Over a few months, we narrowed our search to a handful of pastoral candidates, and we interviewed those candidates. I was keeping an open mind and open heart about who we should select. I know we all took the job very seriously. There were 15 people on the committee, so it was a big group, and sometimes that could become hard to come to a consensus, but as Chris Rush mentioned during his testimony, there was another couple we interviewed who gave Jesse a run for his money. For me personally, when we interviewed that couple, I felt very moved. I was really feeling a connection to them and their family. Both of them had been raised in Christian homes. They had chosen to go into the ministry right away. They'd followed God's path for their lives from an early age, and they had never struggled with alcohol or drug addictions. I know a lot of people in CrossRoads have struggled with alcohol or drug issues. Not all of us have, but it became apparent some people were thinking on the committee that might not be the best couple for the best person to be our pastor because they might not be able to relate to some of our congregation. I wasn't really sure about that or not, either way, but I understood where they're coming from. I know Jesse had worked with men at the rescue mission who struggle with addictions, and I know Jesse has shared some about his own life that way too. So, but speaking for myself, I honestly didn't feel that strong connection to Jesse and Kimmy when they interviewed, like I did with the other couple. I was really struggling with feeling like I wanted to know where God was leading me, and I didn't know yet. I understood the fact that Jesse was already a CrossRoads member. He understood CrossRoads and our mission, and he could relate to CrossRoads members, and especially those who have struggled with addictions. And so in my head, I could logically see that he would be a great pastor, but in my heart, I just wasn't sure that was what was God telling me or not. So I just felt such a connection to the other couple. In fact, their kids were praying for our church to find the right pastor, whether that was their dad or not. And I'm pretty sure probably knowing Jesse and Kimmy, their kids were as well. I just didn't hear that in the interview. But anyway, it was really moving to me, that other couple was. So I prayed really hard that God would help me with my decision. I wanted to do the right thing. And this is where the story gets good, because after Jesse's interview, he sent a thank you letter to the committee. And in that thank you letter, he shared some of his heart and how God had guided him through different jobs. And it just became very clear to me. That was when God finally spoke to me. It was like, it took me forever to get there. But I finally did, because I could see that these jobs that Jesse had, that they were all leading toward this position, toward being our pastor. And I was like, oh, thank you, God. My husband was sitting next to me in the car, and I was like, oh, gosh. Oh, I was reading it on my phone, and I was like, oh, thank you, God. I'd been praying, and I just said, Daryl, I just want you to know, I just finally got the answer I've been praying for about the whole search committee thing, and I was really happy about that. And it just made me feel good to know for myself. So anyway, I knew Pastor Ron had been meeting with Jesse weekly for years about as mentoring him and things, but it was just really awesome when God actually spoke to me. And this is where the story really, really gets good, because then Bishop Perry had asked all of us 15 people on the committee to go home and pray about. We'd already interviewed a handful of candidates. We were to go home and pray about it, and then each separately email Bishop Perry, who was either our first choice, our first and second choice, or if we wanted none of the candidates, whatever our choices were, we were to go back and email him individually. So we did that, and out of 15 people, and this never happens in the work world, but it was practically unanimous. I think there might have been one vote that was maybe for him to be second. It was their second choice or something, but it was practically unanimous. And that was what I tried to share with Jamie one day, because I was like, oh, Jamie, it was so cool. I was like, it was the neatest thing that we all knew. I mean, some people knew longer than I did, but we all finally got there. Sorry. But anyway, God did lead us to that. And Bishop Perry thought that we had talked amongst ourselves. He figured we had influenced each other. But I think everybody I talked to had not talked to anybody else, except they'd been praying about it. So we all talked to God, and that was who told us. So I just, what was I going to, there's one last thing I was going to say here. Just a second here. Yeah, I already said that about Jamie, sorry. But I felt very blessed to have been part of that search committee. And I just wanted you all to know, those who weren't able to be weren't on that committee, that Pastor Jesse is our pastor because God really placed him in this position and because he accepted God's call. So.
Thank you.